Currently, the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz is still in place. As a result, high oil prices continue. On May 4th, the United States launched Operation Freedom to allow ships from third countries trapped in the Strait of Hormuz to escape. Let's take a closer look at this issue today. Let's take a look. President Trump said in a post on Truth Social that countries around the world have asked the United States if it can help release their ships trapped in the Strait of Hormuz. He also said Operation Project Freedom is set to start Monday morning Middle Eastern time. President Trump said the U.S. delegation is having very positive discussions, but also warned that if this humanitarian process is obstructed in any way, unfortunately we will have no choice but to respond strongly. He also said that they are merely victims, and that this ship movement is solely to rescue people, companies, and countries that have done nothing wrong. It's almost like launching a military operation in the Strait of Hormuz. After U.S. countermeasures, President Trump seems to have made another bold move there. The United States Central Command announced via X that under President Trump's orders, they will support Project Freedom to restore freedom of navigation for merchant ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz. They plan to deploy destroyers, over 100 aircraft, and 15,000 troops. Commander Brad Cooper of Central Command said maintaining the naval blockade while supporting this defensive mission are vital for regional security and the global economy. Of course, this was something that became known later. It is reported that the U.S. military will directly enter the Strait of Hormuz and that U.S. Navy vessels will personally escort the ships. According to a report by the Wall Street Journal, this operation is a procedure that allows insurance companies and shipping companies from various countries to coordinate the operation of ships passing through the strait. It was also reported that the plan excludes U.S. warships directly escorting ships through the Strait of Hormuz. Additionally, according to a report by Axios, a U.S. official also stated that this operation does not necessarily include U.S. Navy vessels escorting merchant ships. There is a clear reason for this. If U.S. warships actually enter the Strait of Hormuz, they will immediately come within range of Iran's coastal defense network. Iran is known to have deployed numerous anti-ship missiles and mobile launchers along the strait's coast, and in this case, warships moving along fixed routes are at much greater risk of being detected and attacked. If small, fast attack boats are deployed here simultaneously, close-range engagements could occur. In this complex threat environment, deploying large warships deep into the strait can be a significant military burden. Another key variable is sea mines. It is estimated that there are sea mines in the strait area, either installed during past conflicts or newly laid, but their exact locations and numbers have not been fully identified. Because sea mines are difficult to detect and take a long time to remove, if warships or merchant ships enter the area without ensuring the safety of the route, it can lead to unexpected damage. Merchant ships have limited defenses, so even one sea mine can cause catastrophic losses. The United States appears to prioritize route coordination support over direct escort methods for this reason. The U.S. Navy is likely to focus on monitoring and intelligence gathering in the outer areas near the strait while providing relatively safer routes for merchant ships to travel. According to officials, they are considering a method of analyzing danger zones using satellite information and reconnaissance assets, and then providing route data by selecting sections where mines are less likely to have been installed. They also plan to help merchant ships by sharing real-time Iranian military activity and threat information, allowing ships to minimize risks while moving. This method is being evaluated as a practical option because it can guide ship movements while reducing the risk of military conflict. Since there is no direct escort taking place, there are certainly opinions questioning what is different from before. From the perspective of merchant ships, they don't want to take the risk of passing through the Hormuz Strait unless necessary. Because of this, it seems we need to wait and see whether this operation will actually succeed. Currently, it's urgent to quickly reopen the Hormuz Strait, where over 2,000 oil tankers and ships are being held. Additionally, the strait has been blocked for more than 2 months. As a result, 20,000 crew members reportedly face food and water shortages on board, while international oil prices remain high. Even if OPEC or the UAE decide to increase production, oil prices are not likely to drop easily, and it doesn't look like the war will end anytime soon either. Israel's public broadcaster Kan reported that President Trump stated he cannot accept the 14-point ceasefire proposal that Iran counter-offered. President Trump reportedly said he could not accept Iran's proposal after reviewing it. Iran's recent 14-point proposal reportedly called for war damage compensation, guarantees against future aggression, troop withdrawal from areas near Iran, ending the maritime blockade and sanctions, halting the war on all fronts including Lebanon, and creating a new Strait of Hormuz mechanism. However, there are several points that the United States cannot accept, such as imposing transit fees in the Strait of Hormuz and maintaining Iran's nuclear facilities, so President Trump reportedly showed signs of agitation. Concerns about this operation are quickly increasing. This is because the current situation is very sensitive. If the United States actually begins moving ships through the Strait of Hormuz under Project Freedom, Iran is highly likely to perceive it as a direct challenge to its maritime control. Ebrahim Azizi, chair of Iran's Parliamentary National Security Committee, took a strong stance on social media. He stated that any U.S. intervention in the new maritime order of the Strait of Hormuz would be considered a violation of the ceasefire. This remark is interpreted as a declaration that the U.S. operation itself would be regarded as military intervention. He called the operation a delusion, stressing that the Strait of Hormuz and Persian Gulf won't be controlled by such initiatives. This is seen not just as criticism, but as a message implying a possible response. Meanwhile, an incident further raised tensions when the UK Maritime Trade Operations reported that a tanker near Fujairah, United Arab Emirates, was struck by an unidentified projectile. It has been determined that the vessel was attacked about 145 kilometers north of Fujairah. Although the party responsible for the attack has not been officially identified, there are currently suspicions that Iran or related forces may have been involved. This incident is drawing particular attention because it occurred right after President Donald Trump officially announced the launch of Project Freedom through social media. Since the timing aligns, some analysts think this could be a warning. Fortunately, it has been confirmed that all the crew members are safe, but this incident shows that tensions in the Strait of Hormuz have already reached a dangerous level. Looking at the current situation, it seems that we have entered a stage where even a small clash could shake up the entire situation. If Iran actually attacks ships or blocks the shipping route, there is a high possibility that the United States will respond militarily, and if that happens, the current ceasefire system itself could be shaken. Especially at sea, because it's difficult to control the situation, there's also a risk that a clash could escalate quickly. In this situation, if Project Freedom proceeds in earnest, there is a possibility that the situation in the Middle East could once again reach a dramatic turning point. And more importantly, even at this very moment, Korean ships are actually stuck in these waters. As far as we know, there are already 26 ships and more than 170 crew members waiting on board. These ships include oil tankers, bulk carriers, gas carriers, and car carriers. But the problem is that they're not just stopped. The issue is that they've entered a prolonged waiting state. It's already been nearly 2 months since they've been unable to sail normally, so the crew's fatigue has built up significantly, and it's reported that on some ships, even crew changes are difficult. If this situation continues, the impact will be felt directly in South Korea. The first to be hit will be the oil refining industry. If the supply of crude oil coming from the Middle East is delayed or disrupted, refineries will have difficulty securing raw materials, which will soon lead to increased production costs. After that, the logistics and shipping industries will also be affected. If shipping schedules start to get tangled, delays will occur throughout the entire global supply chain, and given the export-oriented structure of the Korean economy, it is highly likely that this will lead to delivery delays and increased costs for companies. This trend will eventually trickle down to consumers. With international oil prices already remaining high, if the maritime blockade drags on, upward pressure on fuel prices will inevitably increase. When gasoline prices rise, transportation costs go up, and this spreads to food prices and the overall cost of living. In fact, in the past, there have been many cases where rising oil prices have directly led to higher prices. If the current situation is prolonged, there is a high possibility that dining out costs, daily necessities prices, and even service fees will be affected in succession. On top of that, the burden on companies is also increasing. Due to higher marine insurance premiums and extra costs in high-risk areas, companies now face increased logistics expenses. Since it is difficult for companies to absorb these costs internally, there is a high possibility that they will eventually be reflected in product prices. What is happening right now is not just a problem at sea, but is tied to our domestic economy and daily lives, so it deserves even more attention. Many of you watching this video are probably experiencing this right now. Some factories have stopped operating. There are also quite a few people saying that the rise in oil prices has become a burden. So if this blockade continues, our losses will also keep mounting.